The first time I ever sat on a tractor, it was this one. I was 4 years old, and my grandfather set me on the seat and put my hands on the steering wheel, and the engine was running. That particular sound, that slow, rhythmic, two-cylinder pop that John Deere people call the Johnny Popper. And I remember thinking it was the biggest, loudest, most powerful thing in the entire world. I was not entirely wrong. There was something about sitting on that seat. The iron seat, no cushion, shaped like a hand holding you, with the engine running beneath you that transferred directly into your body. Not vibration exactly, more like a pulse. The whole machine breathed at 1,000 RPM, and you felt it through the seat and the floorboards and the steering wheel and the soles of your boots. I remember my grandfather standing beside the rear wheel. That wheel was almost as tall as he was, with one hand on the fender, watching me hold the wheel. He didn't say anything. He just let me sit there and feel it. That tractor was a 1952 John Deere Model R. My grandfather bought it new from the dealer in Owatonna, Minnesota in the spring of 1952. He paid $3,100 for it. He farmed with it for 26 years. My father farmed with it for 19 years after that, and I have been farming with it for 28 years since then. 73 years on the same farm. Same machine. My name is Carl Bertelsen. I farm outside of Kenyon, Minnesota. 5th generation on this ground. My great-great-grandfather broke this soil in 1887. 620 acres of corn and soybeans, and one old tractor that should, by every reasonable measure, have been retired decades ago. The John Deere dealer in town, a man named Roger Ashby, who has since retired himself, told my father in 1987 that the Model R was finished. He said the parts were drying up. He said the machine was obsolete. He said, "Ray, do yourself a favor and put that thing out to pasture before it strands you somewhere expensive." My father thanked him politely and drove the Model R home and used it for another 19 years. I want to tell you about this tractor. Not just what it is, but what it means to understand a machine this old, this honest, and this stubborn. Because there's something about a piece of equipment that has outlasted everyone who ever doubted it that deserves more than a mention. It deserves the full story. The John Deere Model R was the first diesel tractor John Deere ever built. They introduced it in 1949 and built it through 1954. It replaced the Model D, which had been John Deere's flagship tractor since 1923. The R was a significant machine for its time, 45.7 drawbar horsepower, which was serious pulling power in 1952. It weighed 7,400 pounds without ballast. The engine is a two-cylinder horizontal diesel, 416 cubic inches of displacement, running at 1,000 RPM at full governed speed. That's it, 1,000 RPM. Your modern John Deere 8R runs its engine at 100 RPM. The Model R just turns over, slow and certain, like a heartbeat that has decided it will not be rushed. The sound. I have to talk about the sound. If you've never heard a two-cylinder John Deere at full pull, I don't know that I can describe it in a way that does it justice. It's a pop-pop, a deliberate, measured pop-pop that you feel in your chest before you hear it in your ears. When my grandfather was pulling a plow through heavy Minnesota clay in October, you could hear that tractor from half a mile away, not because it was loud exactly, but because the sound carried in a particular way that no modern tractor sound carries. There's no turbine whine, no high RPM scream, just pop-pop, pop-pop, like the land itself was keeping time. My grandfather used to say you could tell what kind of load the tractor was pulling by listening to the exhaust. Under light load, road travel, light tillage, the pops were crisp and evenly spaced, almost musical. Under heavy draft, breaking new ground, pulling a loaded wagon up a hill, the pops slowed and deepened like the engine was thinking harder. If they got too slow, too labored, you were asking too much and you backed off. The tractor told you. You just had to know the language. I grew up learning that language before I learned to read. My father spoke it fluently. My grandfather invented his own vocabulary for it. He had names for different sounds, different rhythms, different exhaust colors, that corresponded to different problems or conditions. None of it was written down. All of it was passed directly from his hands and ears to my father's, and from my father's to mine. The starting system on the Model R is its own education. In 1952, cold diesel starting was not a solved problem. Diesel engines are compression ignition. They don't use spark plugs. They fire the fuel by compressing it until it ignites from heat alone. In cold Minnesota winters, getting enough heat into a diesel engine to start was a genuine challenge. John Deere's solution on the Model R was brilliant and strange. They gave it a small gasoline pony engine. A two-cylinder, 18 cubic inch gasoline engine that you start first with a hand crank. Let it warm up for a few minutes, and then engage it to crank the main diesel engine until it catches. 2 engines to run 1 tractor. My grandfather called it the coffee pot because he said starting the pony engine was like getting the coffee going before you could do anything else in the morning. You had to respect the machine's schedule. I still start it that way every time. Pony engine first. Let it warm. Engage the clutch. Listen for the diesel to catch. There's a particular moment. A cough, then a stutter. Then that first full pop of the main engine firing that I have heard thousands of times in my life, and it has never once failed to make me feel something. If you've ever held on to something your grandfather built, something everyone told you to let go of, and refused, subscribe right now. Because this tractor is not just a machine. It's a conversation with people I can no longer talk to any other way. Let me take you back to 1987. My father, Ray Bertelsen, was 44 years old. He'd been running the Model R alongside his newer equipment, a 1978 John Deere 4440 and a 1984 4250, for years. The R did the secondary work, pulling the hay rake, running the PTO on the old hammer mill, light field work when the bigger tractors were busy elsewhere. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest work, and the tractor did it without complaint. That fall, the injection pump started weeping. A small diesel leak, not dangerous, but it meant the pump needed to be rebuilt or replaced. My father called the John Deere dealer, Roger Ashby, and Roger told him the injection pump for a Model R was special order, 6 to 8 weeks out of a warehouse in Illinois, and the rebuild kit alone was $340 in 1987 dollars. On a tractor worth maybe $100-200 on a good day at a farm auction. Roger said, "Ray, between us, this isn't worth fixing. Part it out, get what you can, put the money towards something that makes sense." My father listened. He said he'd think about it. He drove home. He called a machinist in Rochester named Walt Grimsby who did diesel work, and Walt said he could rebuild the pump for $180 and have it done in 2 weeks. My father dropped the pump off on a Tuesday and picked it up on a Thursday. Walt had done it in 2 days because he said the old pump was actually in better shape than he expected, and the rebuild was straightforward. Cost: $180. Tractor back running. 48 hours. That was 38 years ago. The injection pump has not been touched since. I asked my father once why he didn't just listen to Roger and let the tractor go. He thought about it for a minute. He said, "Because that tractor never lied to me. When something's wrong with it, it tells you. Not in some computer code, not in a warning light you need a $400 diagnostic reader to understand. It tells you by sounding different, by pulling different, by the smoke coming out of the stack being a different color. You learn to read it, and once you can read it, you know exactly what it needs." He paused. He said, "I didn't trust Roger's numbers. I trusted Walt's hands." My own relationship with the Model R deepened when I took over the farm in 1996. My father had kept it running, and I inherited not just the tractor, but the accumulated knowledge of how to keep it that way. The parts situation that Roger had called impossible in 1987 had actually improved by the 1990s. The two-cylinder restoration community had grown, specialists had emerged. New old stock parts were being located in warehouses and barns across the Midwest. I found a man in Iowa who had bought out a John Deere dealer's parts inventory from 1961 and had been storing it in a dry barn ever since. I drove down there on a Saturday and came home with a full set of piston rings, 2 sets of intake valves, a spare magneto for the pony engine, and 3 fuel injectors, all original, all still in their paper sleeves, all dated 1954 or earlier. I paid $340 for all of it. Roger Ashby had been quoting $340 for a single injection pump rebuild kit. The tractor has had one major mechanical event in my time with it. In 2003, the main engine threw a connecting rod. This is about as serious as it gets for an engine. A rod failure can destroy the block, the crankshaft, everything. I heard it happen. I was pulling the disc harrow across the north field in April, light load, and there was a sound, one sharp knock, different from anything I'd heard before, and I shut the engine down immediately. Got off, walked around, looked at the oil. There was metal in it. I knew what that meant. I had the tractor towed to my machine shed. I spent a week on the internet and on the phone with 2-cylinder tractor specialists. There's a community of these people. Serious mechanics who know these engines the way cardiologists know the heart. A man named Dennis Prochaska in Wisconsin told me the rod had cracked at the small end, probably a fatigue failure that had been developing for years, and that if I'd caught it when I did the block, was almost certainly fine. He talked me through pulling the oil pan and the affected rod, and he was right. The block was undamaged. The crankshaft was undamaged. The rod had failed cleanly without taking anything else with it. New connecting rod. Sourced from a 2-cylinder specialist in Nebraska. Cost $95. I installed it myself over a weekend with my son Jake, who was 12 years old at the time, and handed me tools and asked questions for 2 solid days. We poured fresh oil, primed the system, started the pony engine, let it warm, engaged the clutch. Pop, pause, pop, pop. The diesel caught on the 3rd compression stroke. Jake looked at me with an expression I will remember until I die. He said, "Dad, we fixed it." I said, "Your grandfather fixed it." I just followed what he taught me. Jake is 33 years old now. He farms with me on this place, and he knows the Model R the way I knew it at his age. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. He knows the starting procedure. He knows the daily grease points, 16 of them, which my grandfather marked with small paint dots that have been repainted over and repainted over again so many times they're more like traditions than markings now. He knows the sound of the pony engine when it's happy and the sound when it's struggling. Last spring, he diagnosed a partially clogged fuel line on the pony engine by ear alone, standing 10 feet away, before I'd even gotten close enough to look. I didn't teach him that directly. He learned it the way you learn a language when you grow up hearing it spoken. By absorption, by presence, by paying attention over years and years, until the knowledge stops being something you remember and starts being something you simply know. My grandfather would have understood that. He never took a class on these engines either. The Model R today does specific work on our farm. It runs the PTO on a 1960s-era Popex silage blower we use to fill the upright silo every fall. It pulls the cultipacker in spring when we're working seedbed on the garden acres. It powers the old hammer mill when we're grinding feed for the few beef cattle we still run. None of this work requires modern horsepower or modern hydraulics or GPS guidance or a cab with air conditioning. It requires steady torque, reliable PTO speed, and a machine that will start on a cold November morning when you need it to. Last November, at 6 a.m., temperature at 14 degrees Fahrenheit, I walked out to the shed and started the Model R to run the silage blower for the morning feeding. Pony engine on the 2nd pull. Main diesel on the 2nd compression. Total elapsed time from walking into the shed to having a fully running tractor. 6 minutes. My John Deere 8370R, sitting right next to it, took 45 seconds to boot its computer systems before I could even engage the transmission. I'm not saying one is better than the other. They're different tools for different work. But there is something clarifying about a machine that has no software, no sensors, no modules, no CAN bus, no telematics subscription. What it has is cast iron, machined steel, rubber seals, and the accumulated understanding of every person who has ever worked on it. My grandfather's grease marks are still on the zerks he hit every morning. My father's repair tags are still wired to components he replaced and dated. My own notes are penciled on a card tacked inside the toolbox lid. 3 generations of maintenance records, written by hand, on the machine itself. The John Deere dealer in Owatonna, not Roger Ashby, he retired in 2001, but the current service manager, a younger man named Tyler, came out to look at the tractor 2 years ago when I needed a new pony engine carburetor. He stood in my shed and looked at the Model R for a long time. He said, "I've never actually seen one running in person." I said, "Sit on it." He looked at me. I said, "Go ahead, sit on it." He climbed up, put his hands on the steering wheel, and I started the pony engine and let it idle. He sat there with the engine running and didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, "I understand why your grandfather kept it." I said, "My grandfather didn't keep it. The tractor kept itself. We just didn't get in the way." That's the whole truth of it. A well-built machine, maintained with attention and knowledge, and a refusal to throw things away before they're actually done. That machine will outlast the people who doubted it. It will outlast the dealerships that said parts were unavailable. It will outlast the experts who said it wasn't worth fixing. My grandfather has been gone since 1991. My father passed in 2019. But on a cold November morning, when I walk into that shed and pull the choke on the pony engine and hear that first small cough, and then the growing idle, and then the big diesel catching and settling into its pop-pop rhythm, they're both there. They're in every grease mark and every repair tag and every pencil note on the card in the toolbox lid. Some machines earn the right to keep running. This one earned it a long time ago. If this one hit something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell me what machine on your farm has outlasted everyone who doubted it. I read everyone. See you in the field.